The pounding in the walls was literally shaking the whole house. Terrifying to go in. And as soon as we walked in, we understood why.
Sounds like you kind of used it as bait.
We watched 3 claw marks appear on the left side of her cheek and blood drip onto her chest.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Ghost City Tours podcast. Today I have a very special guest. He's actually coming to us all the way from Paraguay, and his name is Chris McKinnell. Did I say that right, Chris?
You sure did.
Excellent. Now, Chris just happens to be the grandson of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who most of you probably heard about. And if you haven't, just think of the Conjuring movies, the movies that those are based off of. And I'm sure Chris will have something to say about that as our conversation goes on. But before we get into any of that, once again, thanks for joining us, Chris. And for our audience, the part of our audience who might not know who you are, can you give everybody a brief introduction as to why we're talking today?
Sure, and thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't expect people to know who I am, but I've been working in the paranormal field for the last 44 years, since the summer of 81. I was 16 years old and went on my first case with my grandparents. Well, my grandfather.
Right.
And I'm the director of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. We're an international organization that helps people for free and anonymously.
Right.
They believe that they're being troubled by the paranormal, whether or not they are. And believe me, we have plenty that are.
Right.
We're there to help.
Well,
so that's us.
Well, I think that's a really good mission. And I think it kind of goes in the opposite direction of what a lot of people in this field are doing nowadays. A lot of people, and I'm not saying any names, but it seems like a lot of people use this field as a way to get attention for themselves. And you're actually doing the exact opposite. You're like, hey, don't pay attention to me. We really want to help people understand what's going on here. And I imagine that the importance of that probably came from your grandparents, because that's what they did.
Exactly. I mean, they learned in the 70s to use publicity as a way of letting the public know that they were out there to help.
Right.
I had the luxury of hiding behind them for an awful long time.
Right.
And I don't have that luxury anymore. I have to step forward. It's not something I'm comfortable with, really, but too many people live in fear. Too many people are being taken advantage of by sometimes very well-meaning paranormal teams who really don't know what they're doing. They watch television programs or movies and they think they understand it.
Yeah.
But that's like watching Grey's Anatomy and then thinking you go out and perform surgery. Please don't.
But no, I think what you're doing is very important because, once again, being worldwide, this is a worldwide phenomena. Ghosts and the paranormal are not restricted to the United States, but I think sometimes people forget that. And, for the vast majority of people who might not have access to the media that we do, this can be a very scary thing for them to have these experiences happening in their home or to their family. So you reach out to these people and help them.
Absolutely. I've lived all over the world and tried to expand my understanding of how the paranormal manifests, how it's shaped by culture. I mean, ghosts are ghosts are ghosts.
Right.
But these other things that manifest, they're very culturally specific. And that tells me an awful lot about what they're not.
Right.
We're not talking about demons or jinn or anything like that. We're talking about a thought form. It's an actual spirit. Don't get me wrong. This is not somebody's imagination.
Right.
It's something that takes on a life of its own and can become deadly, like, for instance, a poltergeist phenomena. And to me, that shows how much power we have and what can we do when we let go of fear. And I see the media in particular pumping out fear
all the time.
It drives me nuts. My goal in life is to help people overcome that. And it's like shoveling against the tide.
Yeah, at this point, I feel like it's a losing battle between, the media and whatever agenda they have. Social media, which just amplifies all the negative. We were actually just talking about this before we came on air. There's so much negativity in the world, and there's so much negativity for negativity to attach to.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
To manifest from. I don't like the idea of attachment on this particular type of thing. It's coming from us. It's not an external entity that grabs onto us.
Right.
Yes, human spirits can attach to us. no doubt. Energies can attach to us, but we shape their manifestation.
Right.
It's my grandparents were the groundbreakers in this field. They really were the pioneers, but they didn't have mentors. I had them.
Right.
And I've had many others since them. So when I say something that doesn't sound like it's what they would have said, well, that's fine, because they changed their views over the years as well.
Yeah.
This is a field of research. It's not an industry, although it's become one.
Yeah. No thanks to me, right? Hey, we just tell people about it. Well, you mentioned, you brought up your grandparents, and you had mentioned that your first case with them was 1981. Do you remember that case?
Vividly. I don't remember a lot about being 16, but I was in an over-the-top poltergeist case straight out of Hollywood. Yeah, that kind of stuck with me.
Do you mind telling us what happened or what that was?
No, I don't mind at all. I mean, I do share in most of my interviews. So for those who have heard this before, I apologize. But I was afraid of the dark. I never thought I was going to be on a case. And my grandfather called me one night and he said, "Chris, we're going on a case." August 81. He picked me up with a man named Paul Bartz, who was another one of his assistants. And we went up to Lee, Massachusetts, to a little tract house,
Right.
row home. And the husband and wife were sitting outside of the house, terrified to go in. And as soon as we walked in, we understood why. The pounding in the walls was literally shaking the whole house. There was only a living room and kitchen downstairs. As we're going up the stairs, the walls are vibrating, and you could hear clawing and growling and pounding. My grandfather said, because these pounding noises were coming in sets of 3, this was a sure sign of the demonic. I no longer agree with that assessment. But we got to the top of the stairs. I looked into the bathroom to my left, and there was a giant cross on the wall. It was upside down.
Right.
I was like, oh. My grandfather said, "Chris, I want you to sit in the master bedroom in the dark while we go downstairs and try to use religious provocation to make this thing show itself." I was like, "You want it to show itself more?
Right.
Are you out of your mind?" They wanted to know what they're dealing with. I thought it was pretty obvious.
Right.
But I did it. I sat there in the dark, listening to the things around me, saying, "Gramps, I hear this."
Right.
He's like, "Okay, Chris, let us know if anything else happens." I'm like, "What do you want to happen?"
Sounds like he kind of used you as bait.
I think so. So they got a kitchen pot and they put the Holy Church incense in it. They smudged downstairs, but as trying to bring it up the stairs, it kept going out.
Right.
It's really weird. It shouldn't. So after an hour, I was allowed to go back downstairs, and at midnight, we were on Brian Dow overnight on WTIC AM radio 1060 out of Hartford, Connecticut. It was just a phone-in radio program. We were on all night long. Everything had quieted down by now. There were no more big noises.
Right.
We were talking about the background of the case until about 3 a.m. The woman and my grandfather were on the couch in the living room. I was in a recliner across from them, and the husband and Paul Bartz were upstairs on a princess phone. It was pitch black.
Right.
At 3 a.m., even in absolute blackness, we watched 2 hulking black shapes come down the stairs and stand on the landing in front of us. I have a picture of one of these.
Right.
And you can see them even in the dark. At 3:15, all hell broke loose. The woman screamed. Her face was on fire. My grandfather put the flashlight on her face, and we watched 3 claw marks appear on the left side of her cheek and blood drip onto her chest.
Right.
Then the pot with the Holy Church incense in it came flying out of the kitchen around the corner and just missed my head. I was sitting there with the crucifix from upstairs in my hand. And under my breath, I was saying, "By the power of Jesus Christ, I command you to be gone," with the phone in the other hand.
Right.
This thing hits the window behind me. The shade flies up. The pot is crushed, and the window didn't break. The woman started screaming. She wanted out of the house. And I thought, That's a great idea.
Yeah,
I'm going to help.
that does sound like a great idea. Yeah.
So the lights are now going on and off as I'm running to the front door, right next to those two hulking black shapes. And the door won't open. We've been in and out of there. And then the chair the big recliner I'd just been sitting in tumbled across the room at me. And then the door opened by itself and she and I got out. And as I'm leaving, I'm looking at my grandfather sitting there on the phone, just calmly telling everybody what's happening to him. I was like, holy, that was the bravest thing I've ever seen in my life. But I will be grateful to my grandfather till the day I die, because I went home the next night, and for the first time in my childhood, I went to sleep without the light on. I had faced my fears and conquered them.
I mean, face your fears. That's so far beyond face your fears. Like, that's like a new homicide detective walking up to like some mass murder or something, like the most extreme you could get, your first time out. I've
never had another one like that. Yeah. I mean, I've had other poltergeist cases. I've been thrown across the room a couple of times. I've been levitated over stairs. I've had tons of things happen, but nothing that was that many different types of phenomena. In over 10,000 cases, I've never had another one that came close to that.
Well, you're always searching for that next high, right? Hopefully.
No. That's fine. Don't get me wrong. Because you got to remember this. There's always a real family behind the story.
Absolutely.
That's living in terror. And let me tell you what else happened. After we went and we did a complete cleansing of the home, everything was fine for several months. I don't know why my grandmother wasn't with us that night. I have no idea. But in May of that year, of the following year, I was just about to graduate high school and we were called back into the house. And this time my grandmother went with us. There were fires starting on the glass covers to family photos on the hanging on the walls. Right. And there were other things going on I don't recall right now, but one thing that always stuck with me, the woman was downstairs in the basement. She was doing the laundry and she felt what was like some sharp pain in the top of her head. And she pulled what looked like two claws out of her head. I said,
like real claws?
Yeah, physical claws. I said, can I have these? I want to bring them to the zoology department at the University of Connecticut to get them tested. I was already going there early. And they were not claws at all. It turns out it was the first premolar of a 1 to 2 year old domesticated pig that had been broken in half. And what looked like claws were the roots of the tooth that had been shoved into her head.
I don't even have a follow-up question to that. That's just so bizarre.
It's the one case I wish I could go back and reinvestigate because my grandfather's explanation didn't make sense to me. He said, well, because she used to be Jewish and she converted to Catholicism, the devil hates that, and that's why they were attacked. Now, that didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Honestly, the whole, and I don't know where you stand on this, so if I say something, I certainly do not mean to offend you at all. But, the religious side of these paranormal activities has always kind of bothered me, like the connection that is either there or supposed to be there or something. And earlier you had mentioned, the claw marks, the 3 claw marks, which if you listen to any popular ghost hunting show anymore, they tell you it's the sign of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, right? The demon mocking. And that just never sat right with me. It doesn't make any sense to me. And now that you said you don't think that that's what it is either, I'm curious to hear what your take on that is.
Well, here's how I think of it. First off, I am a pastor, but I'm a pastor without any religion. I think that God is too big a concept for us to understand. Right. I think religion can be a wonderful tool for working with the paranormal, and I've seen it work in every religion, every culture in the world. Right. From the Coqui people in the jungles of Colombia to Jaguar Negro, the witch mayor of Catemaco. They all have rituals and religions that work fine with the paranormal. But religion is a terrible microscope for the paranormal. It's a terrible way of looking at it. You have to look at this thing through cultural anthropology, psychology, consciousness studies, quantum physics. I know the phenomena is real.
Mm-hmm.
I just refuse to believe in the superstitious explanations that we give for all of it. The reason the three has become significant in our culture is because of the Trinity, but
Right.
it's not anything in many other cultures, and it doesn't manifest that way.
Yeah, I always made the joke when we would do ghost hunts, every once in a while that would happen to somebody. And I said, so what do you believe, that like somebody passes away and they go to like a ghost school and they tell you, well, if you're going to scratch people, only use 3 fingers. Like, it just never has made sense to me at all. And, I am not a terribly religious person. I have a lot of respect for religion. I think maybe your and I views might align a little bit. But I've never been able to make the jump from this being anything more than I don't want to say physical thing, the paranormal, but I've always I've always had a hard time connecting that to religion. Whereas most people, it's religion first and then facts, if that makes any sense. And I certainly don't mean to offend anybody, but.
No, I agree with you. To me, quantum physics is more important than religion to understanding all of this. Psychology is vital.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen things that science hasn't been able to catch up to yet. For instance, I was in a bed in Tewksbury, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't had any phenomena for 2 years. The case was solved. It was done. It was over. And we kicked a 10-year-old out of his bed so we could spend the night there. And he didn't like that.
Right.
And the bed picked up and flew across the room and smashed down into pieces with us in it, me and my cousin.
Right.
I don't believe that was demons or anything of the sort. I think it was a pissed off 10-year-old who hooked into the energy that was still in the home.
Yeah.
Nothing ever happened again in that house. It was just a one-off after 2 years.
No, I agree with you totally. So, there's a field of study. It's actually the study of consciousness, the noetic science.
I know, it's in my book.
Yeah. And I've been toying around with this. I don't want to call it a theory or anything like that. It's just me really just goofing around with some ideas. And I've been working. It's funny. We were literally I'm looking at Paul and Steve here. We were literally just talking about this morning. I've been working on this for about 6 years, just my idea of what consciousness is and how it impacts the world around us. But for the longest time, I would run into a wall, and that wall was really hard math because we'd start getting into like Goodwill Hunting type math. And I'm like, I can't figure that out. But now that AI has come along, we're able to input some of this and actually get some real answers. And I really do believe that a lot of this ghost phenomena that we experience is a result of consciousness attaching itself to different complex structures in the world around us. For example, I think one of the mathematical equations we put together, when I say we, I mean me and ChatGPT, shows that it's possible that if consciousness is a field instead of something that comes from us, which is what my theory dives deep into, that it is possible for those consciousness experiences to attach itself to things like electromagnetic energy, which, by the way, you're going to know where I'm going with that. So
you're following my theories,
right?
Yeah, we're in tune completely.
Well, I'm gonna have to.
You're talking about consciousness of the universe. We are the universe looking back on itself. You're talking about Jungian philosophy, collective unconscious. You're talking about Akashic record. Everything is consciousness. The energy flowing through me right this moment is flowing through you as well. We are all connected. I believe that anybody who's sensitive, the people we call psychic,
right,
what they're actually sensitive to is electromagnetic energy, and that their brain has to be rewired to accept that information. That's why they have so many different ways that that message is interpreted.
I
don't believe in residual hauntings exactly.
Okay.
What I believe in, I have a theory called temporal overlap theory, that when there is a lot of electromagnetic energy pumped out in a particular place, for instance, Gettysburg or the Tower of London, it leaves a temporal tether through time. And as long as we keep renewing that with our own conscious memory of it, then we can re-experience that moment. Whereas we're never going to re-experience cavemen times because we have no conscious tether to those times.
Right. No, I definitely think you're onto something. I actually, you know what I'll do? I'm going to get your email and I'm going to send you this paper I've been working on. Like, and we'll have to figure out which book or whatever yours is in and check that out. Cause maybe we can, I love talking about this stuff because I really think that you always make the joke. Sometimes I go so far into this theory and so far into this work, especially now that I've been able to use AI to help some of these complex math problems. I'm sitting here looking at this. I'm like, there is no way some dumbass guy from Louisiana is the one that's going to figure all this shit out. But it's just making so much sense once you start eliminating all that noise and really just focus on, the signal, no pun intended here. And I more and more, I believe that is what can help explain a lot of this paranormal phenomena.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, my book's not completely written yet.
Right.
Because I'm constantly finding new research.
Right.
And then I go back and prove to myself that the current theories are not going to upend everything that I'm working on.
Yeah.
I just think if I've seen quantum physical effects on the physical plane, then I know that science hasn't caught up to us yet.
Right.
But the more science is catching up, the more quantum physics is putting out these new theories on consciousness. It's echoing ancient mystic theories and beliefs. And that to me is extraordinary. It just goes to show when people want to say, oh, well, aliens must have helped build the pyramids. No, we were extraordinary then too.
Yeah.
We have power. Don't take away our own abilities by putting them out there for somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, once again, I know the guys in the room are going to be like, Tim, we're talking about this again. But, you talk about like the ancients and the mystics and all this stuff. And what's really funny is that as I've been working on this theory, for years now, there is so much of it that actually really aligns with religious practices, but it's not religious. So for example, one of the ones that I've been working on over the last couple of weeks was this idea of like, is there a such thing as heaven and hell in the afterlife? Right. So like, and I know if consciousness is actually received by us and not generated from us, when we pass away, it's simply that our body is not receiving consciousness anymore. It's not that we lost it. But then I was like, okay, well, in the math, it shows that based on that model, there has to be some imperfection in the model because if you achieve perfectness, that could be a bad thing too. So it started showing where that consciousness could actually kind of branch off and there has to be certain parts of it that would essentially loop itself and it become very fragmented and very like chaotic. And pressing that idea a little bit further, it's like, okay, well, when you die, if your energy is more attracted to one of those, what they call basins than the other one, is that what going to heaven or hell is, where your consciousness is no longer received by your body and it's kind of just back in like the good consciousness, we'll call it. Or it's possible that based on your brain, the state of your brain, even praying, by the way, like they were showing like that is something that could actually make your brain waves more aligned with the good consciousness, I'll call it, than the fragmented one. But if you don't do that, there's a possibility that your consciousness, as it's not being received by your body anymore, it might be received by this fragmented, chaotic part. And in my head, I'm like, is that heaven or hell? Like it's so mind blowing. And if I'm figuring this out here, I'm not that I'm figuring anything out, but the real people doing this work, I mean, I'm sure you guys have way more advanced theories or ideas than I do.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, no one is an expert in this field. Mm-hmm. We're all pioneers. We're all going after this with whatever expertise we bring to it. But here's how I would look at what you're saying. Your body shapes your consciousness. Your experience shapes your consciousness. What brings you back again and again and again is your inability to let go. Your attachments, whether it be an attachment to unfinished business, to love, to a home, to a life, whatever that is, it's going to keep pulling you back. Mm-hmm. But that's because you're not reintegrating with that higher, greater consciousness. You're not letting go of the self.
Right.
Buddhism, for instance, is all about letting go of the ego, the sense of self. Mm-hmm. And I believe that they're onto something there.
Yeah.
that if you want to be part of that greater consciousness, you have to let go of your sense of self. This is a moment in time where you're experiencing, but this man I'm talking to right here is not the man I would have been talking to 10 years ago. That was a different man.
Right.
And I believe in reincarnation. I'm not sure whether or not the entire soul is reincarnated or only the parts of me that refuse to let go of attachments.
Right.
Because if we are one whole, then it's only those attachments that need to be reincarnated to be worked out.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the idea of karma. Karma is all about what pulls you back again and again to those lessons you have to learn because you refuse to let go of them.
Right. Yeah. It's all very interesting stuff. And I can't wait to see, the progress that's made over the, the next X number of years as science actually starts to take this seriously. Because for a long time, the study of the noetic science, really it was considered like, the mystical stuff, and it does seem like science is starting to take a much more modern approach looking at that. And I think that's going to yield incredible discoveries.
I agree with you. I do.
Might even be scary discoveries. And why?
We could go so many directions with this. This is probably one of my favorite conversations.
Nice. Well, I think that, we don't need to, I know you're on a limited time today, so we can't have it take up the whole thing, but I will say I do find it very interesting what's going on in the world today in relation to this idea of consciousness, maybe being non-local, and people's innate desire to get back to that. And I'm just going to call it like that pure, the good stream of consciousness. I think everybody might know what I'm saying, but everything that's going on in the world today, it just seems like everything's becoming, more chaotic, more fragmented, and, everything's bad. And I think we talked about this briefly before we jumped on the air. It's just like, with social media and the news, like everything is amplifying the bad, which is just leading to more bad. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, a lot of people in the world today are also considering themselves less religious as this is happening, because it's like, there's something going on in the world today that's actually pulling people further away from what we were meant to be as human beings into this material, non-spiritual place that we're all finding ourselves in. It's very interesting.
I don't have an understanding of God.
Right.
To me, we're like three different blind men touching different parts of an elephant, and we can barely get a concept of that.
Right.
But one thing I do believe in is that God gave us free will. We have the power to make heaven or hell. We have the power to send ourselves to hell. I've seen it. I've seen people who refuse to pass over because they're terrified of what will happen to them because of their beliefs.
Right.
And they're creating their own hell right there on earth.
Yep.
And I see individuals who are using algorithms to feed fear because it's more engaging than love.
And it makes money.
Yeah. And we don't have to live that way. We have each of us a choice. And unfortunately, and no matter where I'm in the world, I see people buried in their phones.
Yeah.
That's how they live. They're disconnected. And it's causing massive damage. We need to demand and make changes.
Yeah.
And refuse the fear. People are being pulled apart when the truth is we don't have anything to pull us apart about. They create conflict.
Yeah.
And then they amplify the conflict that didn't really exist.
Which, by the way, some people might call demons or the devil. Funny enough, it's funny how this stuff all ties together.
For me, man is a storyteller. And when we're faced with the unknown, that's truly the most terrifying thing possible. Right. The unknown has zero rules to it. We cannot figure out how to cope with it. So we would rather call it the devil than deal with the unknown. And that's what we do.
Yep. Yeah. Well, part of, trying to, I said we're not going to use the whole hour for just, conversations about this, but, your grandparents, this was a big part of what they did, was trying to help people understand to the best of their abilities through their lens why these things were happening in their life, and hopefully try to bring them some relief, if not eliminate, the the trauma that they're going through completely. And, you know, why do you think that was so important to your grandparents?
That's how they started out themselves. I mean, my grandmother had a gentler start.
Mm-hmm.
She would see auras around people at school.
Right.
And she learned quickly to shut that down, to not tell people because of the reaction she got.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandfather, his very first experience he must have been 10, 11, 12. And in his own home, he saw his landlady who had died standing in the hallway.
Right.
And when he told his family, they didn't believe him, of course. But then one night he was in bed and this woman, middle-aged woman, very nicely dressed, came in, sat down on the bed, talked to him, very sweet, said her name, didn't say her name. But when my grandfather told his father and described her completely, my great-grandfather was amazed because that was his sister, Babe, who had died. And
right.
My grandfather just felt he needed to understand this. So after he got out of World War II and the Navy, he did the GI Bill, he became an artist. My grandparents started going from place to place to place all over the country for 6 years, just investigating haunted houses. My grandmother would check out every newspaper in the library, trying to find stories, and then they would drive there.
Right.
And they would paint the house on a plate, and my grandmother would go to the front door to show it to the family and see if that would get them into the house.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother would use her abilities to figure out what was going on. But even then, they didn't believe in demons.
Right.
That didn't come until they saw so many things they couldn't explain as a ghost, and they fell back on their Catholic beliefs and said, oh, demonic.
Right. Now you say that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you say that almost like you don't share that same belief.
Not at all. I don't believe in demons.
Right. So where did you guys kind of separate paths, at least in that thought? How did that end up happening?
It's newer for me is after my grandfather died.
Mm-hmm.
Even back then, I was still struggling with what is a demon? Is it an interdimensional being? Is it an energy being? It's only been the last 10 years or so that it's really become what I believe in my own head now.
Right.
And it's because I'm constantly looking at the research and trying to figure it out. And I will probably have new theories later in time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not adapting to evidence, then you're creating a religion. You're not in a field of research.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandfather in the 80s, he was into the satanic panic big time. And I didn't feel that as much.
Right.
He didn't like psychology back then because in the 70s, parapsychology was all the rage and it wasn't very good at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, he changed. He adopted psychology as a tool. He understood eventually that witchcraft wasn't the same thing as Satanism.
Right.
It took time, but yeah, we were on the same path. It's just I've gone a lot farther. I mean, I've done investigations on 6 continents.
Right. We got to make that 7. Where those, I'm going to assume it's Antarctica ghosts.
I don't know if I'm going to run into any penguin ghosts. Maybe Shatner's crew, maybe.
It is funny. I do think there was at least one ghost story I know of, in that facility, the big facility they have down there. I do think there's at least one ghost story down there, but that will probably have to wait a while.
Yeah, I'm 61. The chances of my getting the chance to be there, I would love to, but.
Right. Well, the war, your grandparents, they were really well known in these movies that come out, and I don't want to say too much about them, but I'm sure I know your thoughts on them, and they're probably similar to mine. They are very much associated with the idea of religion, that religious good versus evil battle.
Yes.
Do you think that they got, and I don't know how to say this without sounding rude, because I'm not trying to be rude at all, but if it's not a religious thing, why do you think that they were so successful in using what they thought was religious, methods to help people with those?
Well, if you recall earlier in our conversation, I told you religion can be a wonderful tool for dealing with the paranormal,
Right.
no matter what the religion is.
Uh-huh.
Because what is really going on with religion? You are taking a ritual to focus your intention and your belief into something effective.
Right.
There are studies out there that show, double-blind studies where people don't know they're even involved in the study, and neither do the doctors involved, that show that there is a certain small amount of efficacy for the power of prayer. The people praying for strangers are helping to heal them.
Yep.
Now, if that can work, then why can't a ritual focus your intention into something else?
Yeah. As in, like, it's not that you're praying to quote unquote God that's making the difference. It's simply the fact that all these people are putting their energy and their intentions behind this singular idea. You know, that's what you're saying, is that just that alone.
Almost. I am saying there is something greater than you,
Right.
and
Okay.
greater than me, that we're connecting with.
Mhm.
I won't put the name God on it, because God to me is a placeholder for something I don't understand.
Right.
But there is something bigger than me, obviously. And yes, you're connecting with that. You want to call it your higher self, you want to call it the universe, I don't care what you call it. You can call it Krishna.
Mhm.
And it's going to be just as effective.
Right. No, I'm absolutely on board with that. I am going to send you this paper I've been working on, because there is a section in there that talks about, the idea of prayer could actually help align somebody in the right direction, when it comes to that field of consciousness.
Absolutely. Look, meditation works. Breathing exercises work. Yoga works. We have many different ways of connect. Reiki is actually used in American hospitals and offered as a treatment.
Right. That's the one I'm still trying to wrap my head around. I'm like, wait a minute, you're not going to touch me and I'm going to get better. So, all those years, working with your grandparents, it sounds like you went on quite a number of cases with them. What are some of the biggest lessons that you learned with them that you think people nowadays are getting wrong? When they jump into this field of study.
If you're not there to help, you shouldn't be there at all. That should be your first priority. You're there to help.
Right.
And be willing to drop everything and do it. Do not toy with these families. Be there for them.
Right.
This is God's work. This is not about ego. This is not about clicks and likes. Yes, my grandparents used publicity as a tool, whether it be as a leverage against the church to make them finally help, which, believe me, I understand.
Right.
Or if it was just to say, look, we're here to help. That's what I'm doing right now, talking to you.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm hoping people, the help that you would give is people just listening to this or watching this and understanding that what people think this whole ghost hunting thing is today isn't what it should be. It should not be going out hoping that you get attacked by a quote unquote demon. This is a phenomena that impacts people a lot of times in a negative way, and they need help, not attention. It's not look at this family, it's help this family, I think, is what the biggest lesson people could take away from this.
exactly. And I'll let you in on a secret. It's an old secret. I don't even like the paranormal. I don't do this because it fascinates me. I do it because of TikTok and videos and the TV shows. There aren't enough good people out there helping in something that's really misunderstood.
Right.
If you're hearing a knock on your door in the middle of the night and your Ring camera doesn't show anybody there, it's not the devil come a knocking. It's probably your grandmother letting you know that she's checking on you.
Right. Well, why do you think that people are so frightened by the paranormal? Why do you think or what do you think people need to do to integrate this more into life as something that is naturally occurring instead of something to be afraid of?
Well, what I said earlier, people are terrified of the unknown. The unknown is inherently scary, but we need to understand that the truth is we've barely scratched the surface of our understanding of reality.
Right.
We have to approach it with awe, and we have to be willing, very important, we have to be willing to say, I don't know. Right. Instead of putting a name and a label on it. We need to put labels on everything. And that's wrong. It's not just limiting. It makes it become whatever you're labeling it as.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important. I think that that's one of the big mistakes people make. I think for a lot of people, it's their ego. You know, like me in my position, you know, the company that I run, you know, Ghost Tours. Throughout the years, I can't tell you the number of people who've come up to me and asked me, "Hey, Tim, what do you think ghosts are?" And I know the answer they're looking for, and I know the answer most people would give them. But when I tell them, I have no fucking clue. I have no idea. All I know is that, you know, from my perspective, this weird shit happens and we're able to document it. And that is terribly fascinating to me. And I want to know the why. And they kind of look at me like, really? Like, that's the answer you give? But that's the only answer I think anybody should give.
Yes.
You know, because if you go out there assuming like, yes, this is definitely my dead grandma, or this is definitely, you know, so-and-so, or like, how do you know? Like, how do you know? Like, that's what drives me insane about so much of this stuff. The three scratch thing we talked about earlier. Like, how do you know? We don't even know what this thing is, yet you're telling me its intentions already. You understand it's so complete. Give me a break.
There are sometimes it's obvious. There are times, believe me, I treat the dead like the living with respect. And I'm not someone who will go in challenging. I go in asking permission, unless I'm there for, you know, another reason. But I have seen, like, at 16, my great-grandfather was in the backseat of my car. He had died when I was 4. I didn't recognize him. I didn't know who this old man was.
Right.
When my mother shows me a picture, I'm like, holy criminy. She had prayed to him that night to watch over me. Or, you know, my grandmother coming back to see me. Am I going to say, no, Graham, you're not real?
Right.
I can't do that, you know?
Yeah, I get it. Well, going forward, what are you hoping to, you know, achieve with this? I know you have the Warren Foundation.
Warren Legacy Foundation.
The Warren Legacy Foundation. What is your goal with that, and what are you hoping to accomplish as you continue traveling the world?
Honestly, and this is going to sound really grandiose, I want to help people overcome fear.
That is grandiose.
Yeah. I want to help empower them. I want them to understand they are the authors of their own lives. And that they have more power than they know. That the only limitations they have are the ones they put on themselves. I want to finish my book. I want to educate people and start doing lectures again. I love doing lectures. I've done them all over the world.
Right.
And I do have a TV program I would love to do. It's kind of Anthony Bourdain meets the paranormal, where I show how the paranormal manifests in different cultures and how those cultures deal with it. It's not me telling them, it's me learning from them so that I can teach people to overcome their own fears. Like, hey, look, this is real. This is really happening.
Yeah.
Look at how this culture deals with it. You don't have to be afraid.
Well, I think you're onto something, Chris, because I've said similar things, not on the scale you're talking, but, you know, we're located right outside the city of New Orleans. And, you know, we get a lot of people that come here that want to take a ghost tour. And, you know, Ghost City, we've always prided ourselves on the fact that we don't exaggerate stuff. Like, we really do the research. We want to tell you the history and the culture and all these things. And what we start to encounter, and I'm willing to bet you have done the same thing, is that the paranormal, which, by the way, 50% of Americans don't even believe in, or whatever the latest stat is, has had such an influence on the way the city of New Orleans came to be and the city that it is today. And I'm not just talking about, you know, voodoo or all these things that people think of when they think of New Orleans. There is a real factor that, you know, the paranormal, you know, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, it really helped make New Orleans the city that it is today. And I'm, you know, other examples pop into my head, like, you know, like England, for example, like they're not that England's a city, but you know what I mean? Like, you know, London, like I remember reading stories about London and how much, you know, that aspect of our history helped influence the city that it became.
It's all over the world.
Yeah.
The reality is it's everywhere. Our beliefs shape the way we create our societies. Just for a simple example, if you go to Mexico and you look at the crosses that are in front of the church, if you look at a side panel of it, it has an octagon shape to the cross. And that's because it represents all the beliefs of the indigenous peoples. It impacted Christianity and the way it was portrayed in Mexico.
Right.
Look at Brazil, for God's sake. Brazil is completely shaped by spiritualism.
Yeah.
And this is true all over the world. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the fact that most people don't even realize it is what, I guess maybe I'm not surprised, but I wish they understood that a lot more, open their eyes to it.
That's what I'm hoping to do. Yeah.
So are you planning on, going on are you actually planning on going on a tour or anything like that, or?
Oh, I'm working on it. Yes. We've got a 21-day tour planned.
Oh, geez.
That creates my grandparents' tour of Haunted Great Britain. It's one of my favorite experiences that I ever had with them. And we start in London and we do everywhere, 3,000 miles. We see every haunted place we can find. And we break it up into week-long stints for people who can't do the full tour. But
right.
I think it's going to be amazing. I can't wait to do it every year.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to do one in Ireland as well.
That would be great. Well, what were some of your grandparents' favorite places to visit over there?
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt, Borley Church, without a doubt, and York.
Right.
Borley was especially important for them because of Borley Rectory, which no longer exists, burned down in 1954, I think. But Harry Price was a ghost hunter back in the day. Okay. He was a Brit. And my grandparents didn't have mentors, but they looked up to him. When my grandparents first went to Borley, the church, which is very haunted, there was a little penny that fell from the rafters right at my grandfather's feet, and it was dated 1926, the year he was born.
Yep.
And that was to my grandfather, that was a gift from Harry Price.
Right.
And Harry actually did show up in our hotel room in Halifax, Nova Scotia once. It was very interesting. I walked in the hotel, the room I was sharing with my grandparents. My grandfather said, "There's a ghost in the room." I was like, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Sat down on my bed, and my grandmother's talking to Harry Price.
Right. Like, what have you been up to?
Well, no, we were there for a conclave, a group meeting. There was the two men who had found or rediscovered Dracula's castle, Radu Florescu and a guy named McKinnell. Radu was a direct descendant of Vlad Tepes. And then there was Dr. Varma. And Harry knew about this gathering and he wanted to be invited. And of course, my grandmother said yes.
Right.
And then Harry said something I never believed at the time, but I'm beginning to believe now, that he was going to watch over me for the rest of my life because I was going to do something to change the way the paranormal was viewed.
Right. Well, you're certainly on your way.
I think so. Once my book is out, I think it's going to present the possibility of a paradigm shift. Right. I think when we have the unified field theory in physics, that's also going to help open up some doors to our understanding. So we'll see what happens.
Well, in your efforts to carry on your grandparents' legacy and their work, there's one question I want to ask, and I've thought about how to ask this because I don't want to come across the wrong way. Your grandparents, your grandparents have created a lot of controversy, in their work. And, some people even say that they made it up. And I do not have an opinion on that at all. What I hear, what do you have to say to those people when they, or what do you wish that those people knew about your grandparents that they might not know, that might show them, they're not who you think they are?
They started investigating in about 1947. Nobody even heard their names until 1969.
Right.
So it wasn't as though they were doing this for fame or fortune. They never made a penny for 22 years.
Right.
And even then, they weren't exposed to the public really until the Lindley Street case of 72 or 73. Yes, I think the publicity went to my grandfather's head a little bit. Absolutely. I know he could spin a tale sometimes.
All good grandfathers can, by the way, so that's okay.
Yeah, but the truth is, I lived it with him. I know these cases were real. I don't have a doubt about that. Did he tell the stories correctly all the time? No. Sometimes he changed details for one reason or another, sometimes to protect people.
Right.
Other times because he said, well, it's a better story this way. I was like, yeah, but the other one was more terrifying. Yeah, that's a better story.
Right.
Anyway, but at their heart, they were two people who loved to help others, whether you were a person or an animal. I mean, my favorite story, my grandfather he was driving by this poor dog in a muddy, icy puddle with a chain wrapped around the tree. He kept passing this poor dog and he got sick of it. And he walked over, unhooked the dog, slammed on the door, said, "You just lost your dog," brought him home and named him Duke.
Right. Well, he's a passionate guy.
Very passionate, passionate, but very caring.
Yeah.
You know, I have learned I have to lead with absolute honesty at all times. I cannot help anybody if you question my integrity,
right,
my honesty. So I'm always going to answer any question as clearly and honestly as I can. My grandparents, you know, they were leading. They were not. They didn't have my experience.
Right.
I had theirs.
Right. No, well put. Well, Chris, I know you have a lot of stuff going on today, and we're already approaching that hour that I told you about, but I'd love to have you come back on sometimes, especially talking about, you know, our little consciousness, you know, ideas and how that might relate to, because we haven't even touched the surface, as you know.
No, we haven't.
Like, I would love
to. Yeah.
Well, let's try to make that happen. But, you know, in the meantime, where can people find out more about you if you even want them to?
I do. No, I do.
Yeah.
I understand that I am the face of the foundation right now. So you can reach out to me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. At Instagram and TikTok, it's Warren Files.
Right.
On Facebook, you can find just me, or you can go to the Warren Legacy Foundation Facebook page. You can go to warrenlegacyfoundation.com.
Well, we're going to go ahead and let you go. But like I said, you know, we'll have maybe Chris reach out to you again, because I'd love to dive deep into, you know, noetic sciences with you and, you know, not pull any spoilers or anything out of your book. But, you know, I as you can imagine, there's not many people I come across every day that's like, oh, yeah, Tim, like, I'm totally interested in your crazy theories and ideas. You know, let me know.
I know. I mean, I have no problem with spoilers. I'm a teacher.
Right.
I'm not writing this book to become a millionaire. I'm writing it to teach. And if I can teach it here as well, a lot of people don't read. I'd rather do it here.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. All right, Chris, well, we're going to let you get back to your very busy day.
Thank you very much.
But you enjoy yourself down there in Paraguay, and we'll talk to you next time.
Cheers.
All right. Thanks, Chris.